Hello friends, this week my guest is keyboardist, arranger, songwriter, composer, and producer Rob Mounsey. Rob has worked with an impressive catalog of A-list musicians such as Steely Dan, Madonna, Natalie Cole, Michael Franks, one of my favorites, James Taylor, Carly Simon, Paul Simon, Karen Carpenter, Chaka Khan, Aaron Neville, Diana Ross, Michael Bublé, I know, it keeps going on, Billy Joel, Elton John, and a host of many more. Hello, Rob. I cannot express what a pleasure it is to have you here today.
Hi, Rick. Nice to be with you. Thanks for all the kind words.
Tell me about your childhood. Was there a musical background in your family?
There were no musicians in my family. There was no music in my family at all. They may have thought I was out of my mind. It was just something I decided to do. Really committed to it about age 11. My mom liked to sing in church. There were no musicians. I inherited from my older sister a couple of orchestra scores from a music appreciation class. She was much older, she was in college. And they were the Berlioz Fantastic Symphony and the Mozart Jupiter Symphony in C. And I got very, very interested in how those scores were made, and especially what they looked like. I loved the music, but it was also, I loved looking at the scores and how they were like these beautiful diagrams, and they were elaborate codes for something else. So that's how I learned to read music and write and notate. I really don't remember not being able to read and write music notation. And I just kind of fell in love with it.
What were the first instruments you learned to play?
We had a little one manual organ in our house with little chord buttons and stuff, and so that was the first one. Generally I was learning to play the notes because I wanted to hear the stuff I was trying to write. I also played a little bit of guitar. I gave that up, and starting in 4th grade, I was a clarinet player in the school band. Not a very good one, because I didn't like to practice. But later on, I was in a summer stock theater in high school, and I taught myself a little flute, and I taught myself a little soprano and alto sax. Even tried to play tenor, but I had a really hard time getting down to the low notes on the tenor because I had a clarinet embouchure so tight.
When was it that you realized you wanted to pursue a career in music?
I was about 11 years old, and I just committed. I felt like this is really fun. I seem to be able to do it. I think I can learn to do it a lot better, and this is what I'm going to do. And it was commitment from about that age. It just excited me, and it also really thrilled me listening to records and thinking what it might be like to be in a recording studio and record music and be a musician, maybe an arranger, maybe a conductor, and I did end up doing those things. So I was kind of single-minded about it.
You moved to New York City in 1976. Why New York City?
I came to New York City at the end of '76. I actually moved here on my 24th birthday. Weirdly enough, I was in Boston. I went to Berklee College of Music up there, and graduated in '75. Mainly graduated to make my parents happy, and hung around Boston for a year. I really was not terribly ambitious. I just was happy to realize that I could do music and make a living and not starve and not have to do something I really didn't want to do, like, stock shelves in a grocery store or something. But I was never motivated by money or fame or success. I just wanted to keep doing what I was doing. I was playing with a local singer who was signed to RCA Records here in New York, and I was in his band. And my friend Leon Pendarvis, who really made everything happen for me, came up to Worcester, Massachusetts, and saw this guy in his band and said, yes, said to the singer, yes, I'd like to produce your record, don't bring your band. We'll use New York guys. And then he had a second thought. He said, if you want to, you can bring the kid on the end. And I was the kid on the end, playing a mellotron, horrible instrument, mellotron and an ARP Odyssey. So I commuted down to New York in the summer of '76 to make that album for RCA, and Pendarvis also hired me to do a couple of big string arrangements for it, and then he said, I think you should move here. I think you should move down here. If you do, I'll introduce you to some people and I'll book you on my dates. So that's what I did, and that's why Hi Pen, that's the guy that made everything happen for me. You can still see him every Saturday night leading the Saturday Night Live band. He's a fantastic musician, arranger, composer, songwriter, producer, all the above. And he really changed my life, for which I've thanked him personally.
After doing some digging around, I came upon an interesting little gem in your resume. You played the synthesizer, keyboards, and clavinet on the classic disco album Let's All Chant by Michael Zager Band. The title track was a huge hit across the world, and millions of people have danced to this song. It made it into the top 40 in the United States in 1978. How did you become involved with this record?
Michael Zager and Jerry Love had a real kind of conveyor belt kind of production line operation going on. They made about one disco record every month. They just cranked those things out. Very nice guys. I did a lot of work with them, with a band that included Jeff Mironoff and Francisco Centeno and Alan Schwartzberg, Ruben Spacini, and that was great fun. I remember very well that in those days, this was probably 77 or 78, and in those days, there were no usable computers. There were no sequencers. There was no digital recording. There was no digital editing. There were no polyphonic synthesizers even. My first synthesizer was an ARP 2600, which was all monophonic with the patch chords, the spaghetti chords and stuff. So I remember very well doing those 16th note bass lines that go dabba 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 dabba, but turning the multi-track to half speed. We turned the 24-track multi-track to half speed to 15 IPS. So it would be, and I would be listening to these half-speed drums, trying to stay right in the middle of that pulse, and turn it back to 30 IPS. It goes dabba 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 dabba. It sounded like a sequencer, though there were no sequencers. But that's how we did that stuff. Later on, I bought a little standalone sequencer that had a lot of little switches, a little box this big. But there was no way to sync it up. So I'd do things like play a little melodic, squirrely little curve into it, and then just trigger it, and it would just kind of go blah, 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 blah. Did that a bunch on some Spyro Gyro records and stuff. There were many generations of technology that we went through.
What were your feelings when Let's All Chant topped the US dance charts.
I was aware, I guess, that Let's All Chant was this huge worldwide dance hit, but you know, it wasn't my scene. I didn't go to dance clubs. I didn't go down to the disco where the happy people go. So that I was just a studio musician.
In 1979, after working on several albums for name musicians such as Cissy Houston, Roberta Flack, the soundtracks for Animal House, and The Wiz, you were commissioned to work on worldwide superstar Karen Carpenter's solo album. How did this come about?
Karen Carpenter. We all really loved Karen. I got involved with Karen because I got to know Phil Ramone, the great legendary producer, the Pope of Pop, and I worked a lot with Phil for 35 years or more. But at the very beginning of that time, Phil was producing Karen's solo album, which was pretty controversial. Her brother Richard really didn't like the record, and I think that was probably because Karen wasn't singing in her trademark very, very low alto register, which is really pretty and everybody loves it, but she was trying to stretch out and go a little somewhere else. She was a wonderful person, great musician, nice person, very smart, funny. It was a real shock when she died not long after we finished the record. And that record was shelved for something like 20 years.
I don't know what's going down. You're gonna run this poor girl from uptown. Yeah. I like the way you move so much that I guess I just lost my head. I know we should really know much better. I guess I just lost my head. I know we don't really know each other, so pardon the things I said. Won't you tell me you forgive me?
But I was thrilled that she recorded a song of mine. I've never been that much of a songwriter, but she did record a song that I wrote called "Guess I Just Lost My Head," and that was a thrill for me.
In 1980, once again, you are the busiest musician in New York City. Your work includes Ashford and Simpson, Gladys Knight and the Pips, and Spyro Gyra. But the highlight is your work on Steely Dan's album Gaucho. Excellent album. This must have been exciting. Tell me about the album.
Steely Dan Gaucho. People are still fascinated with these records 40 years later. And I've told the story of Gaucho, the track Gaucho especially, quite a few times. We worked on that track from about 12 noon to about 12 midnight. We were recording to a click. It was a band. It was myself, Steve Kahn, my friend, my buddy Steve Kahn on guitar, Anthony Jackson on bass, Jeff Porcaro on drums, who was an astounding drummer. Victor Feldman was playing another keyboard. And we worked 12 hours doing those many takes. We couldn't hear anything wrong with any of them, but at about midnight, Donald and Walter said they were giving up and going home. They thanked us and left. And we stayed for another 4 hours, doing another 7 or 8 takes to a click. To us, they all sounded perfect. And a couple days later, they called us and they said, "We really want to thank you for staying. We think there might be something here we can use." So what they ended up doing was cutting the multi-track, the 2-inch multi-track, in about 20 places, and and editing it together, and then erasing everything but the drums, because that whole process was only to get a drum performance. This just astounded me. We all came back and re-overdubbed our parts. Now, just recently, after 40 years, a journalist from LA called me a couple weeks ago. She had written had written a book about Jeff Beccaro and was asking me questions about these sessions. And it turns out that Jeff knew that they were going to erase everybody but him, and I'm amazed at that. He did not let on. He didn't tell us. I'm glad he didn't tell us. We might not have been trying as hard as we did. But that was only to get a performance from Jeff, and Jeff was an astoundingly accurate player, and just astounding independence of 2 hands and 2 feet. Every take sounded perfect to me. So those records, I think, really stand up today. To me, they still sound very modern. And I guess that's because of that torturous process that they always went through. Musicians were never, in my experience, musicians were never unhappy about it. They were happy to be there. They loved the music and loved trying to make these guys happy, which was not always easy. It was rarely easy, actually.
Let's jump to 1974, and you're working with Madonna, composing the music arrangement for her #1 classic, Crazy for You. How did you connect with this job?
Madonna, Crazy for You. I produced several albums for songwriter, singer named Michael Franks. I don't know how familiar you are with Michael Franks. The first record I ever produced was his record Passion Fruit in 1982. And because of Michael, I knew some people at Warner Brothers, and Madonna was doing the song Crazy for You for a movie, the very forgettable movie called Vision Quest with Matthew Modine. And someone at Warner Brothers said, "This is a ballad, so you need an arranger." That was some sort of rule they had in their head, a little bee in their bonnet. You need an arranger, it's a ballad. So they called me, and I kind of wrote out an arrangement, but then I played it all on analog synthesizers. It's a strange record, but it was #1 record. And by the way, the little oboe remarks throughout the record, that was Madonna's idea. Actually, it was a really good idea. At some point, she said something like, "This is from a movie. Like, you know how in a movie there's always like an oboe or something? Can we get like a guy to play oboe?" And sure, got the greatest studio double reed player at the time, George March, who and I jotted some stuff down for him to play. So that's the stuff that's on the record.
To date, you have received 4 Grammy nominations. Congratulations on that accomplishment. One of those nominations is for your very own 1987 collaboration album with Steve Kahn called Local Color. Tell us about this album.
Steve Kahn has been a friend of mine, an old buddy of mine for a long time. I played on 1 or 2 of his records. It was his idea that he and I should make a duo project. So the first one was Local Color. 10 years ago, we did it again with a record called You Are Here. And we were just having fun with it. We were just making music and using the technology that we had for musical purposes, not really commercial purposes, just expressive purposes. We were both very, very amused to be nominated as new age artists, like we had made a new age record. We had no idea that was what we had done. We thought we had made some sort of jazz record, kind of. So that was pretty funny.
I would love to talk about every musician you've ever worked with, but that would probably get us in the Guinness World Records for the world's longest interview. However, of all the musicians you have ever worked with, which job was the most unusual or maybe awkward?
I don't want to. I don't want to say anything negative about people, especially people that are still alive, who could take revenge on me. But I will say, an unusual arrangement was probably the shortest horn arrangement I ever wrote, which is also probably the most famous, and that's the horn arrangement on "You Can Call Me Al" on Graceland by Paul Simon. Paul Simon and Roy Halley asked me, can you make a brass section play that figure that the rhythm guitar plays? I think it's Vincent Linguini, who recently passed away, sadly. That's a rhythm guitar lick. So, it's something like 3 trumpets, 3 trombones, and a bass saxophone, I think. Unusual instrument, B-flat bass saxophone. And it's very, very famous, but it's really 2 bars repeated endlessly, and there's one repeat that's different. There's that one. And then I guess I just remembered it kind of goes up. The inversion goes up once in there somewhere toward the end. And they left the credit off the album. Thanks a lot. Thanks, fellas. But the arrangement probably took less than 10 minutes to write. And millions of people all over the world have heard it. I'd like to have a nickel for every person that's heard it. I would definitely buy a vacation house, retire, probably. Maybe a couple cars.
So what's on the agenda for future projects? What's coming soon?
I'm just about to leave town to do some concerts for my artist Brett Eldridge, quite a well-known country artist, Nashville artist, but we made a swinging big band Christmas album with him 5 years ago. We just made a second one this summer, and it's called Mr. Christmas. So we'll be concertizing in a few select cities in November, December.
Now for a little fun, Rob. I ask all my guests this question. If you could be the member of any television sitcom family, which would it be? That's
a really funny question. I was agreeing with your other guy, Terry, that Art Carney in The Honeymooners is a really nice choice. He's a wonderful comedian. But thinking it over, I'm remembering when I was a little kid and seeing Burns and Allen on TV, on the little black and white TV, George Burns and Gracie Allen. Especially at the end of their sitcom, their little show, they'd come out in front of the white picket fence and do a little routine. Really loved them. I would be George or Gracie. I mean, I suppose if I had my choice, I'd probably be Gracie, because Gracie got the laughs.
So Rob, I want to thank you for doing this interview with me, You are always so gracious in doing interviews with me. I believe this is like the third one we've done together now, and I really appreciate your time. You are such a talented musician, and I have so much respect for all the work you do. I look forward to your upcoming projects, and I thank you very much for your time.
Rick, thanks so much for having me. It's really nice to be with you, and let's stay in touch and keep listening. Thanks.